Hey guys, another quick video for our Learning Japanese playlist. Probably one of our shortest playlists because we've always thought it was better to learn Japanese from Japanese people rather than learn it from other foreigners. So there's not much on there. However, we received a message from one of our patrons asking a few questions about kanji. So he specifically asked about Japanese people and kanji. So a couple of his questions were, how did Japanese people not forget the kanji that they learned? I guess it's just which ones they use. It's sort of probably similar to us with our English words, you know, our English vocabulary. The words that we use or the words that we see or read or hear are generally the ones we retain, aren't they? You know, whereas the rarer words that aren't relevant to us, that we don't use ourselves and we don't hear them or see them, obviously less likely to remember them. So it seems to be similar with the kanji. Also too, it's worth noting, obviously Japanese people, same with us with our vocabularies in our own native languages, Japanese people, there's a fair range of kanji ability in amongst Japanese adults, you know. Obviously all the kids go to school and have the same syllabus for kanji pretty much, up to high school, and depending on what they do at university. But we see a fair range of people with kanji, and it's quite common, Japanese people, not to know very many kanji at all. In fact, we've sort of mentioned this before, on television here, they tend to have subtitles under everything, and it's just the Japanese visual way of communicating. So when people are talking on TV in Japan, often they have text at the bottom of the screen saying showing what the Japanese people are saying, what the people are saying. And if they have kanji, usually under the kanji they have hiragana. And we also see it in written things as well, like menus and newspapers and things on the internet. When something's written, if there's kanji, often, and particularly if it's a rare kanji, often they'll put the hiragana underneath for those people who don't know the kanji. So they're sort of always allowing for people who have low level of kanji ability. So also we've seen it too. I used to be in a kyudo group, and we'd go to shrines quite often to do kyudo, and it's a Japanese archery. And there was a lady in the group who was an older lady, and she was a master of shodo, right? Japanese calligraphy. So she was sort of, anytime there was any sort of kanji, sort of a rare kanji, they'd always ask her, you know. And it was quite common. We'd go to a shrine and there'd be old style kanji in the shrine, and they'd say to her, "What's that one mean?" And she, "Oh, I don't really know." You know, that's quite common too. And when you hang out with your Japanese friends and family too, that's quite common. You know, you'll encounter a kanji and they'll discuss it. What's that mean? Does that mean that? Does that mean that? So yeah, our friend said, how do Japanese people not forget the kanji that they've learned? Well, obviously that's what it is. The ones that they encounter, the ones that they see again, the ones that they use are the ones that they remember the most, obviously. Obviously too, there is a way. It's similar to, it seems to be similar to in English. You know, you can often break down the pronouns and what do you call them, the parts of the word to actually decipher what the word means, you know, because if it's derived from Latin or something like that, quite often you can look at it and you know if it says pro something or pre something or un something. It gives you an idea what it means, and kanji seems to have a similar thing. Now, full disclosure too, by the way, my kanji ability is really, really low. I've never studied it. The only kanji I know is the kanji that's relevant to me, right? And just while we're talking about that, it's probably worth mentioning at this point too, it depends what you do in Japan, how relevant kanji is going to be to you. You know, a lot of people come to Japan for 1 year and go work at an English school for a year, and the English school has a rule that you're not allowed to speak Japanese, and you end up in a sort of an English bubble. To those people, probably kanji will never be important to them. You know, it probably just, they'll probably be able to go all year without reading any kanji at all. Hiragana and Katakana are really useful, obviously. My advice always is to read katakana, learn katakana first, because katakana is usually what they use in restaurant menus and things like that. and it's sort of a handy thing to have. Then learn Hiragana, and usually if you can read both of those, you're pretty well right. You know, it depends on what you're doing here. It really does. Some of the kanjis that are important to know if you come here: exit, entrance, male, female. So obviously exit and entrance is self-explanatory. You don't want to be going in and exit or out through an entrance. So that's worth knowing, because quite often in shops here too, they'll have little sign exit, entrance, and buses and all sorts of things have exit and entrance, so you got to know those. And if you go to a restaurant, particularly older style one, you know, quite often they'll have a pink image of a lady or a blue image of a guy to show you the toilets. But sometimes in the old style places, they'll just have the kanji for male and female, so it's worth knowing them. Stop is a good one to know. So just the ones that, you know, that you sort of encounter are usually the essential ones. And then for other people, I mean, there's some people that come here to do jobs where they will need to be able to read kanji well, and for those guys, obviously it's just going to be study, isn't it? I mean, we do know one resource, Japanese Pod 101. We've been recommending that for years, and people often come back years later and say that was really good. I learned a lot through that. We'll put a link underneath this video too, if I remember, because they've got some good resources on there, flashcards and things like that. What else did our friend ask? Oh, what's the minimum effort to not forget the kanji that you've learned? I don't know. It probably depends on the person. You know, it probably depends on the person. It's the same as, again, it's the same as the vocabulary, you know, in our own languages, isn't it? Some people have a great memory for vocabulary, and some people don't. It probably depends if you're a visual person too. There's a whole lot of variations or aspects to this, isn't there, depending on the person, you know. So yeah, look, it's difficult. Obviously I can see what our friend's trying to work out is what he's going to need to do to get his kanji level up. So yeah, just obviously practice is going to be important, isn't it? Also too, it will be interesting, there'll be a lot of people who watch this video who are right into studying kanji. We know some of our viewers do the JLPT tests and all sorts of tests, the kanji tests and things. To be honest with you guys, I've never actually studied Japanese at all. You know, it depends on your lifestyle here, you know. I just haven't had time or the inclination or the need, really. You know, I've managed to live and work here and run a business here and buy a house and buy a car and do everything I need to do without being able to read kanji at all. You know, it's really knowing the vocabulary and knowing the words and being able to communicate in Japanese, really, for most of us, will get you through. Because you know, when it comes to buying a house or when it comes to doing other things like that, everything gets explained to you anyway. I mean, even the Japanese person. So if I'm sitting with my wife and we're buying a house, the contract guy, and we actually made a video about this, spent 3 hours or something ridiculous reading every page of the contract. That's just what they do, you know. And in that case, it's your vocabulary, not your reading ability. It's your vocabulary that's important, understanding what the heck they're talking about, you know. And that's usually the case, you know, dealing with the bank, the post office, because they tell you. I mean, it's part of the Japanese setsume thing, the explanation thing. I've sort of complained a bit about that. Well, mentioned it, sort of complained, I guess. The setsume thing can wear you down sometimes, always having everything explained in minute detail. Can drive you crazy a little bit and can test your patience. But the advantage of it is it's really rare for them to present you with a document and just the document. Almost any time you get presented with a document, you'll get an explanation along with it. So you know, as long as your vocabulary's up to it and your communication skills up to it, you know, the only kanji I've ever needed is those ones I told you before, and a few others that don't come to mind straight away. But you sort of pick them up. You sort of pick up the ones that are relevant to you, and then the other ones they're not. So it just depends. It depends on your lifestyle here. It depends on what you're doing here. You know, some people who work for Japanese companies and kanji, they have to be able to read and write, and you know, they have to pass GLPT tests and Japanese language proficiency tests and all sorts of things, you know. So for those guys, it's all relevant. You know, those guys have to study their kanji, and you know, I know those Japanese Pod 101 flashcards, and there's all sorts of ideas like that. I think they got a chart as well. It's got kanji on it, and so again, you know, you just have to study it and learn it, I guess. Oh yeah, our friend asked about electronics too. You know, if that means that Japanese people don't need to remember it so much. It's sort of true. They have preemptive text on their phones and on their computers and things. So same as with us in our own languages, when we write a word, the computer suggests what you're going to write. You know, if we're going to write electronic, you get to ELEC, and it says, gives you the options, you know. And they do a similar thing with the kanji. They put in the hiragana, and it suggests the kanji, and it'll come up with, you know, do you want this kanji or this one or this one or this one, which is sort of cool. But usually you sort of got to know which kanji it's going to be, you know, which one that you actually want, although they're often connected to a dictionary too. So it is true, you hear the same thing, you know, the things that we hear about young people in our own native languages. Oh, they're forgetting how to write, you know, because they're using all the electronics now, they're forgetting how to write, and writing's not relevant anymore, and all that sort of stuff. You know, Japanese people at school, they use pencils here, really fine pencils, right through to university. They use really fine pencils to write their kanji, and it's all really neat and really tidy and perfect, you know. But obviously as time goes on, you know, the need to write kanji comes less and less because it's all about the electronics, you know. So yeah, look, you know, for people coming to Japan, you know, learn the hiragana and the katakana, because they're definitely useful. And then if you know the essential kanji, and then you know, it depends on your case. It really does. So to our friend who asked for this video, yeah man, study. I used to have an Aikido teacher, and when students asked him questions, you know, Sensei, I don't understand this, or Sensei, I'm not very good at this, he just more practice. which was sort of, for some of the beginners, was frustrating, because they wanted him to hand some sort of magic information to them, and his solution was just do more practice, you know, do more practice. And I guess with all these things, it comes back to that, doesn't it? You know, practice and practice and practice. And no doubt, look, once you get here, and this was the same for me with hiragana and katakana, once you start learning it, when you're actually here, I remember sitting on the train. I don't use the train much anymore, but I used to use the train a lot. And sitting on the train, you know, there's advertising all around you on the up on the top of the above the windows, and there's signs everywhere. And just sit on the train and just reading the signs, you know, and you know, once you're actually here, whatever you've studied before you came here, once you're actually here, the important stuff will be reinforced for you every day. So as far as our friend saying, you know, what can he do what's the minimum effort not to forget? Well, probably harder. Same for Japanese people learning English. Hard for them to maintain their English levels here, you know, because English isn't used here very much. So probably the same for anybody outside Japan trying to maintain a Japanese level or learn kanji. Probably much more difficult because you're not encountering it. But once you're actually here, you're surrounded by signs all the time. You know, so same as a kid learning the language in your native country, you know, your native language, driving along in the car and they see the signs and read it out loud. Oh, look, I can read that. And it's a bit like that as an adult in Japan when you start to learn hiragana and katakana and a few kanji, you know, and you start to look at it and recognize it. Oh, I know that one, I know that one, I know that one. And you just sort of pick it up. You know, and there's a whole bunch of kanji that are easy too, you know. River, kawa, looks like a river, you know. Yama looks like a mountain. Mori, forest. Yama is mountain, yeah, it looks like a mountain. Mori is forest, looks like a forest. Ki, tree, looks like a tree. So lots of the kanji are like that. They're the easy ones, you know. And then when you see them together after a while, you know, Kawamori, you know, oh, it's a river, forest, and you know, a lot of the names of towns and the names of places and a lot of that stuff, you just pick it up. It's obviously much easier living here, you know, with your reading and writing and listening and all that sort of stuff. Actually, on that too, for most of us living in Japan, your ability to write Japanese is not important either, usually. You know, it's useful if you can write your own name in katakana. That's pretty useful because that happens. You know, your own name and address in katakana and katakana or kanji or whatever is required to write your name and address. That's pretty handy. But again, usually not totally essential. My handwriting's pretty bad, so I usually ask them if they say put your name and address on this. I say is romaji okay? And again, see, it's the ability to speak for most of us. For most of us, it's your ability to speak and listen and understand Japanese is the biggest one. Because then you can ask them, is it okay if I use romaji to write my name and address? Yeah, that's okay, they say, and you just write in Roman writing, right? Sometimes underneath that it says kana, and so they want you to write your name in romaji and then underneath write it in hiragana, because that's usually what Japanese people do. They write their name in kanji, and then underneath they write their name in hiragana, because often the kanjis have two different pronunciations or two different meanings, or so the kana is just to clarify exactly what the name is. It sort of seems it does seem a bit pointless sometimes, the kanji, but the point is made that you can write a lot more information in a shorter sentence if you use kanji than if you use hiragana. So that's the pro kanji people, the people that like kanji. That's their point, is that you can write a lot more information in a shorter sentence using kanji than you can with hiragana, because hiragana stretches it right out, right? So you know, that's why the kanji is important to them. So is that all our friend asked? Hopefully that was helpful. It's really comes back to, again, it's going to come back to the practice, isn't it? You know, and if you're outside Japan, that is going to be harder. You just have to expose yourself to as much kanji as possible. You know, get the flashcards, get the poster up on the wall, you know, get the books, whatever, you know, books of kanji, whatever you got to do, whatever works best for you. Those flashcards are pretty good. They have explanations on them, you know, and breaks it down. So this means this and this means this, and that's why this kanji means this. And it breaks it down and explains it. That's really the best way. You can't really look at them and remember them unless you know what they mean. You know, there's meaning in those patterns and those shapes. You know, this means this and this means this, and these together means this. So you really, to remember them, you got to really understand what they mean. You know, why it's like that. So yeah, I'm quite happy not to have to study it, to be honest with you. But it depends. You know, a lot of them, because of my English Friendly Directory too, and my connection with a lot of business people in Japan, there's a lot of people here that run businesses and do all sorts of stuff here, and they're in the same boat. They don't really need to be able to read and write kanji either. You know, because the guys who own restaurants and hotels and all those things, they have accountants. And again, see, if you have an accountant who does your accounting, and you can speak and understand Japanese really well, you have a meeting with your accountant, you talk to the guy, and then say see you later, and he does all the paperwork, right? I mean, there's a degree of trust required. You know, if you happen to be married to a Japanese person, then you've got a supporter right beside you, haven't you? But you know, obviously there is a degree of trust required, but generally in Japan that's not a hard thing to do, is to trust people. But again, you know, if there's someone that you trust that's Japanese, is quite handy in situations like that, you know. So, but you find you fly on your own, you know. I've got my Japanese wife, but most of the things that I do business-wise are usually just on my own. You know, it's pretty rare. Occasionally a letter might turn up in the mail. Open it up, what the hell's this, you know? And usually you can tell just by some clues on it. I know what this is. It's the health insurance, or it's this, or it's that, or you can usually work it out, you know. But occasionally I get one that's a total mystery. What the heck's this, you know? One turned up recently. It was from the city saying that I could have a free cancer check, right? You know, what's it saying? I couldn't work it out. Said to her, "What's this?" And she told me, "All right." And again, see, if you can speak and speak Japanese and understand Japanese, again, see, what's that say? You know, and she told me, "Oh, okay, righto." So I couldn't read it, but when she read it, I could understand it, and that happens a lot too, you know. So anyway, hopefully that helped our friend, helped answer his question. Sorry, dude, I'm going to say what my teacher used to say: more practice, more practice. Come to Japan. That's your solution. Every day you can be reading kanji and signs, and I'm sitting here, there's a sign over there, the name of this park, and there's another one over there saying please don't make noise at night, and you know, This is where it is. This is where it is. So anyway, hopefully that helped our friend. Hopefully it helped someone else too. More videos coming soon.